There's so much circling back, and I think it's good because if you go and watch my content from a year or 2 years ago and you watch something today, you're going to hear, right, some, shall we say, upgrades, right, some additions, some subtractions, and just taking the things I've learned, taking the things that people have implemented, and then changing accordingly. And even when I come in and do work for people, it's always dynamic as hell. I stay on after the work is done, putting everything in place, and I stay on so we can catch up and make the changes that are required to make it most successful in their model, right? And you guys know I work with models that are in network, out of network, straight up cash, no mention of insurance. I work in practice models that are all different: 101, peds, pelvic health, aids, assistance, it doesn't matter. So I come in and we build these programs out. And then of course there needs to be monitoring. So just like these videos, audios, whatever they are, me talking at you thing is we gotta, I like to revisit things over and over and over. And we all like repetition. We all do best with repetition, right? Whether it's physical or mental, repetition's good. This thing I want to talk about today is this team approach. What I like to do is, because healthcare and physio is so swung over to the provider, I like to swing it all back the other way so we can come back to the middle. The interesting thing is, right, when you talk about a team approach versus the provider, it's a completely different context. The provider is part of a team. Who is the most important member of the team? Well, at any one point in time of a patient's journey, it shifts. And so we need to look at this team approach and where people fit in it. And not because so many people I'm dealing with, right, are providers, shall I say, at heart. If I had $1 for every conversation that started with, hey man, I don't want to get out of patient care, that they then move out of patient care, of which I did that too, I'd be a rich man. So we got to deal with a provider, right, that has believed and is told and is shown a world where they are the center. Think about this. Just get the patients in front of me, I'll be successful, right? Just let me do it my way, I'll be successful, which is ego-driven as all hell. And I did it. And I set my practice up that way. I did it. I set my providers up that way. So again, it's ego-driven as hell. And the reason I swing it back so far is go, look, it's a team approach. And I would argue the front desk is more important than a provider, is because where this person is in their journey with your business. Prior to arrival, the provider only plays a role when the front desk team member asks them to play a role. After evaluation, front desk plays a support role to the provider. After the course of care is complete, right? Everybody, right? Who owns that? Marketing, back office, whatever. Marketing team, maybe. Front desk team, maybe. But not the provider. So the provider owns 1/3 or 1/4 of this patient's journey. And if you guys have been hanging around long enough, you know that the work that goes on outside of the provider time actually facilitates outcomes. It's called research, my friends. Outcomes, expectations, right? All of it. So when we look at the patient's journey and where they are in this journey, we realize the amount of energy and time that goes into this whole journey. And it is equal, my friends. And I would argue heavily, because of this ecosystem of the business, because of understanding how someone is moving through your ecosystem, the earlier steps have a greater impact on the final result. That's why it's so important to understand that that business is an ecosystem. And so what I want you guys all to think about when I say things like, team greater than the provider, or, we got to stop focusing on the provider, is, when you get into the work, yes, one of the objectives of the pre-arrival phase is to set the provider up for success and actually take work. This is what's interesting. If you guys listen enough, meaning, frequently enough, the conversation is around taking work off of the provider. Everywhere I go, the providers are over leveraged. So again, everybody is so provider focused, right? This is, we're not going to get into this today, but this is where burnout occurs. We over leverage them. They're responsible for the cancels, for no-shows, for drop-offs, for completed plans of care, for billing, for visits, for all this bullshit. By the way, they're only responsible for one of those that you heard, or two things I said there. And the metrics we hold them accountable and the conversations we hold them accountable are just insane. And yet we continue to send our providers and focus on the providers, teach them more treatments, teach them more services, more billing education, right? Now the upside is we're teaching them more conversation, more managing and setting expectations, more alliance building, motivational interviewing, all the things that facilitate them and the patient across from them. Yet we have still, as we do all this and elevate all this, we've still forgotten about the rest of the team. So, right, when I say quit sending your providers to more Con Ed, ... without engaging in sending the rest of your team to Con Ed or training them. So this is this idea about the team being greater. There is no team. There is no great team on the face of the earth. Michael Jordan, read any of his stuff, man. Scottie Pippen, take Scottie Pippen off of that team. Michael's still probably the greatest player, but what do those teams achieve? Every great team, every story I've read about every great team, not a lot, but at that level. And by the way, business teams, right, understand the value of the whole greater than just, you build a freaking team around Michael Jordan. Don't get me wrong, but those people, right? My Warriors, every playoff win, I can show you 3 guys, non-starters that contributed heavily. And without those 3 non-starters, every playoff series had guys off the bench who stepped up where they just made huge plays, right? Because they knew their role on the team. And so again, the team was greater than the individual. And that's what I want you guys thinking about through all this. What am I doing? What work, time, money, and energy am I investing into my non-providers? And this just made me think, it's funny, this isn't why I did this. I got tagged in a post a couple weeks ago on Facebook of someone saying, look, I send my providers out for training. I'm looking for something for my non-providers. Does anybody have any resources? And I got tagged. And I'm going to get on the phone with the guy, not to pitch my services, but to go, what do you want? What do you need? What are you looking at? And steering someone in the right direction and going, these are the things you should probably be thinking about for those team members. And by the way, not my services, education, training, Con Ed stuff. So I was really excited to see someone. I invest all this time, money, and energy in my providers. I want to give back to the rest of the team. And I don't know where they're coming from or why they said any of that, but I'm thinking, damn, man, this is someone I want to reach out to, someone I want to help. Find the resources. The team is greater than any individual. And again, I'm going to reference this at the end of this. When you understand the flow of your business and the ecosystem of the business, what happens further upstream has a greater impact on the next step, on the next step, on the next step. So what I'm telling you is the team is greater than the provider. Team is greater than any one individual. And if you leverage this properly, the provider doesn't have to be the focal point, doesn't have to be the one getting yelled at. There's only 2 metrics you should be measuring your providers by, and visits and units billed are not either of them. And if the work is done upstream and the ownership by the front desk team is taken and the accountabilities and the key metrics are there, then people show up ready for that provider, ready for that provider to be successful. And then that provider just does the work they went to school to do. And not everything's heaped on them. By the way, in my world, in my training, in my systems, anybody who drops off the schedule before visit 3, I go straight upstream. I don't even go to the provider first. So if I see a drop off before visit 3, there's not blame to be assigned here, people. Where do we start looking for the solutions is the question. Drop off before visit 3, I go straight upstream and I look at where did this person come from? Was the intake process managed properly? Were expectations managed and set? Were trust built, right? Then I work in to the provider's involvement. But I don't go straight to the provider for every fucking drop off. After visit 3, I start with the evaluation. I look at how that went. I look at the follow-up visits. Then I go upstream. Before visit 3, I go upstream, take all that, then I go into the evaluation. And I'm going to tell you right now, because I followed up with these people. Again, I stumbled into this shit, my friends. I had so many questions when I was building this out, which was in hindsight a good thing. Thank God. So I just said, why are these people dropping off? And I started calling them. I called every one of my freaking drop offs for months. And you and I both know they didn't all call me back. Of the ones who did, there was one trend. And there was only one thing that mattered. And it all fell under one umbrella, one category. Expectations were not properly set. So when someone shows up for an evaluation, and this was the feedback I got, right? So I'm hearing this, well, my provider didn't do A, B, and C, and this person dropped off on visit 2. And I'm going, wow, we didn't set the right? Everybody else goes back to that provider and goes, you got to start doing a better job of doing this. And I'm like, no, that's upstream. We got to set the expectations before they ever arrive of what they will receive with that provider on eval day and what they should expect going forward. It's everywhere, man. It's in all the research, right? But that's just an example of how the pre-arrival phase sets the provider up for success. The provider, right? So the provider has the information they need, and they just walk this person through a regular eval. And then what happens? Expectations are met. Why? Because we've systematized it out. I don't tell the providers what to do. They know what information and how to have a conversation around that information while they are using their expertise for an objective exam, for the assessment, for treatment, and then discussing the plan of care. All that is all set up before they ever arrive. So when this person's moving through this, right, subconsciously, more than likely, it's what I expected. Wow, it's exactly what I expected. Whoa, look at this, exactly what I expected. This is why the focus has to come off of that provider and that 45 minutes to an hour to this journey. The team is greater than any individual. The team is greater than the providers. The team is greater than the billing team. The team is greater than the front desk. The team is greater than any one individual. And if you want team success, you got to focus on the whole team. That's it, my friends. All right. So I think this was a good revisit. I think this was short. I don't know. I always say they're going to be short, and those are the ones that are the longest. So I'm going to say this at the end. I think this was short. If you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, comments below. But this is the mindset, my friends. This is the future. Or shit, fuck that. Future was fucking years ago. Should have, right? Is what it is. This is a differentiator, right? Managing these people and setting expectations before they arrive is a differentiator. Wow, that was different. Wow, this feels good. Wow, I'm in the right place. They could get the treatment elsewhere. It's not about the treatment, not about service. They can get it elsewhere. So why do they feel like they're in the right place? Because you've managed out this journey to make sure the conversation starts earlier and information keeps flowing downstream and expectations keep getting delivered on, and your cancel rates go down, your drop-off rates go down, your completed plans of care go up, and your culture improves. On that note, cheers all.